My name is Scott Challoner, and you are listening to the Leaders Council podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. Now, as regular listeners of our programme will know very well, part of our mission here at the Leaders Council is to bring you a variety of distinct perspectives on leadership and current affairs. And to this end, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined on today's show by Brigette Bard, the founder and CEO of BioSure. Brigette, very warm welcome to yourself, and thanks ever so much for joining us on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Scott. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Brigette. And just for those listeners tuning in that might not be familiar with yourself and the business, perhaps you could just sort of expand on sort of what it is that BioSure does and what it is that you specialise in.
Sure. Well, we're a UK healthcare business, so we work right from developing products to moving them through manufacturing, regulatory approvals and market entry. And our deep-rooted passion really is about providing people with tools, credible, robust tools to let them take control of themselves and make their best informed decisions.
Yeah, so I guess that involves essentially manufacturing, developing and sourcing, sort of testing products, doesn't it? Sort of prevention products, so sort of nasal sprays, that sort of thing. Is that the kind of thing that you generally do then?
Yeah, well, I mean, our legacy, sort of from our team background, is very much in the self-testing arena.
Mm-hmm.
So we have worked across exceptionally high-risk medical devices, such as the first home HIV self-test, and we still work in HIV self-testing. Obviously, we became involved with COVID, as every poor person on the planet. So we were still at that time very focused on testing and self-testing. But because we were working so much with businesses and with members of the public, we realised that there was a much greater demand across healthcare. So we have worked with partners in the US to bring a nasal spray to market, as you mentioned, the BioSure Pro, which actually prevents colds, flu, COVID-19. So we are expanding far more into the healthcare arena as well as self-testing now.
Yeah, fantastic. And we did, of course, here at the Leaders Council run a news story on the BioSure Pro nasal spray out there, and I'm sure that's something as well that we'll probably touch on a little bit later on in the programme, because we're entering a period of time, aren't we, where there is an economic downturn and a lot of businesses are going to be looking at, where they can make cost savings. And even though, of course, we have had a pandemic over the last couple of years, I suppose sometimes it still can't be impressed upon people enough, is it, that you can make so many sort of cost savings within business by actually making sure that you keep your workforce healthy, because absenteeism actually loses you a lot of money, more so than you probably think.
Well, honestly, we've been staggered by some of the numbers. I mean, some recent data that was published, and this is not specifically due to the pandemic. This is just general, sickness leave with staff. Cost small businesses something like £5 billion a year. So staff well-being is paramount, and that's kind of for us across all boards, whether it's physical, mental health. So I think the more tools we can provide, the more opportunities we can provide to make people feel safe and secure and actually be safe and secure in a cost-effective manner has got to be a win-win. And there's such a significant clinical bottleneck that actually taking that into your own hands is essential now.
Yeah, definitely so. And I suppose what your products are focusing on is trying to allow people to really do that. You mentioned, of course, a staggering sort of $5 billion overall cost for SMEs in sort of lost productivity and sick pay. So if you average that out to sort of every individual employee, you're talking about sort of £780, aren't you? It's absolutely incredible just what you can lose on one individual, and empowering the individual to sort of protect themselves, take control of themselves. That's incredibly important at a time like this.
It really is. I mean, I think we learned a lot when, sort of, as I was saying, sort of the BioSure team legacy was developing the HIV self-test. And we created a market out of nothing, and it was super high risk, and there was definitely no route to market, and there were free tests available on the NHS. But we have learned so much from that experience. One of the biggest things is people's time. So, you talk about something could be free, but actually when you consider the time taken to do something or to prevent something, it's really significant. But what we have really noticed is how difficult the behavioural change is to kind of look at preventative healthcare. So people, as soon as someone has something, they react to it. But the preventative part, which is quite difficult to quantify really, requires a significant behavioural change. There's a lot of educational kind of messaging and training that we do around that.
Yeah, and what sort of stuff is it that you actually do then to try and sort of instigate that change in behaviour? Because I suppose it is difficult, isn't it, to try and sort of act in a preventative manner when it's sort of not clear that you've got something or you're in the early stages of a condition, because you only tend to really sort of react when it becomes obvious, don't you? And by that point, you're essentially struggling with the symptoms already.
Yeah, that's really, really true. So I think given the economic climate at the moment, one of the easiest ways for people to think about kind of preventative healthcare is through cost-benefit savings. So we work with healthcare and with pharmacists around general messaging to do with preventative healthcare. But I think from April next year, there is a big push coming through, kind of spearheaded by NHS 111. Where there is going to be a much bigger focus, because in this country we are very reactive. In a lot of countries, it is more a consideration around preventative. But this behavioural change, so with our nasal spray, you can actually take that every day, and we know through clinical studies and various kind of situations that we've been in that for the first 2 or 3 weeks, everyone uses it religiously, and then suddenly you forget. A bit like taking vitamins.
Yeah.
Suddenly you get a sniffle and it's, where's my vitamins, where's my nasal spray? So it's almost that mindset really that we kind of try and tap into to keep healthy rather than react to when you're ill.
And I suppose beyond that, even if you sort of are in the mindset of prevention rather than treatment when sort of an illness might come around, what might put a lot of people off is sort of how much a product costs, of course, and what you've also done is sought to address that in light of obviously the current cost of living crisis we're facing.
Yeah, we really have. I mean, we manufacture in the UK, so that does help keep our costs down rather than having to import and, supply chains and logistics. And actually there's 400 sprays, so that's the equivalent of 600 hours of protection per bottle of our product. So even at the retail price, that works out to something like 2.5 pence, per hour protection. But we work a lot with businesses, especially in the city, where there's obviously, discounted prices and bulk pricing. We've actually got something running with the Leaders Council for 25% reduction at the moment. So it's under 2 pence an hour, even in a big team. When you look at that £780 per employee in sickness costs per year, it really doesn't work out too badly.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Essentially, invest in the prevention and then you'll eventually see the rewards. It's one of those things where I guess you do have to almost speculate to accumulate, and it's one of those benefits that you might not necessarily sort of see returned immediately in sort of fresh investment, but it is going to benefit you in the long run, isn't it? It's going to limit your losses.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, the firms that we work with in the city, they're now we're kind of moving forward. Well, obviously, everyone's still working in a hybrid situation, but even people getting back onto trains, and there was an anxiety around it, and there is still some nervousness of going into, really busy situations. I mean, every time you're on a train, there will be someone coughing or sneezing next to you. And, very few people are wearing masks now. So this really, as well as being a physical thing you can do, actually, helps relieve some people's anxiety. So it's been very useful getting people back into workplace as well.
Yeah, certainly so, because like I say, even though obviously COVID social restrictions have been lifted and it may feel like it's no longer an immediate and present danger, there's still some of the legacy of the pandemic that still seems to linger. And I suppose for a lot of people, we might well have forgotten about that. But for a lot of people out there who, maybe in that sort of vulnerable group and may sort of be a little bit more sort of conscious of the risks around it, they are going to perhaps need that little bit of extra reassurance. And it is just as much also about reaching out to that demographic as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that the population's probably quite split, where we've got immunocompromised population or people who are acutely aware of any risk that they might be taking, to the rest of the population who've probably been vaccinated, had COVID, really COVID fatigued, don't care about it at all, which I can't blame people for because I think most people do feel in that situation. But as soon as you do get that cough or cold or sneeze, and we know everyone that's had that in the last sort of few weeks, is when you suddenly think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose if you're empowered in the sense that, you know, you've taken the preventative product and you're going out there, you can have that confidence to sort of go into the workplace, mix with your colleagues and also go and socialise, don't you? It sort of gives you that empowerment. And I suppose you could say exactly the same about sort of the point of care tests and that sort of specialism of the business as well, because obviously when you are in the field of early diagnostics and you're sort of making people sort of informed that you know they might have a certain condition before that becomes obvious, that could potentially be not just empowering but also sort of life-saving, couldn't it?
Yeah, 100% it is, and we work internationally as well, so we do know. I mean, we're acutely aware that everyone has a choice. So what we always try and do is just offer a choice. You know, we don't push anything down going on throw up anyone's nose would be appropriate at this point. But that feeling of empowerment and the life-saving aspect, we have seen it time and time and time again. And with something as emotionally evocative as HIV, where there's bundles of stigma around it, you know, people don't want to think about it, or it's not something that's my problem, it's someone else's problem. Just having these tools available gets people talking and gets people thinking, which in turn kind of, you know, oils the wheels and gets people thinking, and it breaks down some of the stigma. So it can be life-saving. And we've got, there's a big rollout next year, which we're doing in conjunction with NHS around this preventative role, where it's going to be much more, you know, we've got cholesterol tests and diabetes tests and a full suite of products becoming available directly to consumer and through healthcare, where people can, you know, people haven't got time to go to a doctor, they haven't got time to wait, they possibly haven't got time to have time off work. So being able to do this at home really will be quite a significant shift in the healthcare landscape here.
And I think it needs to happen, doesn't it? Because when we're seeing so much noise as well about the COVID backlog and the difficulty of actually going in and seeing a doctor at the moment, access to healthcare, alternative healthcare, let's call it that has to be something that we bring forward, doesn't it? Because if that can alleviate the burden on the NHS as well, then that's only hopefully going to be a benefit in the long run and sort of improve that patient's access.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the clinical bottleneck is literally touching everybody now. So having this kind of space in the middle, whether that's privately funded or through an insurer or wherever else, where we're actually delivering what's called higher value patients to the NHS. So rather than them screening through, they know already who's walking through the door. Treatment within the NHS is still good. It's the diagnostic part which is taking the time. And obviously the later something's diagnosed, the more expensive it is to treat, the more difficult it is. It can have impacts on mortality, you know, lots of things. So we're looking at it as putting this space in the middle that actually, as you say, will allow people to access treatment, but without having the delay in the screening process.
Yeah, and I suppose the critical thing about early diagnostics as well is just sort of given how important and how sort of life-changing they can be, it's making sure that they're sort of affordable to bring to market, isn't it? I mean, that's a huge issue with sort of some of the those really innovative tests that we're seeing being brought forward by sort of big pharma at the moment, and this hopefully is going to be a real sort of answer to that.
Well, it's certainly our goal. I mean, everybody in the healthcare sector understands the kind of regulations, how robust they are, how essential they are, but they cost a huge amount of money to move through. And you talk about, you know, bottleneck and lack of capacity within the NHS. We have to work through notified bodies, and we now have UKCA marking in addition to CE marking, and capacity within notified bodies is just absolutely horrific. I can't really call it anything else. So getting these products through evaluations and then through regulatory approvals is time consuming and a lot of money. And it does need to be affordable at the end of it. So, yeah, lots of things to address and Absolutely. Credible and effective.
Exactly, the efficacy of the product is something as well that has to be proven, and you've got to jump through an incredible amount of regulatory hoops for that, haven't you? I mean, sometimes it's, I suppose, when you think about it, the speed at which we were able to sort of bring a COVID vaccine to market during the pandemic, I think it's maybe made a lot of people forget just exactly how rigorous regulations are before you actually bring out a medical product and bring it to the mass market, because it's got to pass so many different sort of regulations and tests, doesn't it?
Yeah, it has. And I think, I mean, back in 2011, for me, was kind of a pivotal point for me personally when I really put my complete faith in self-testing and self-diagnostics. I sound like I sort of kind of had a crystal ball, but there were experiences I'd had that I knew, or I thought there would be issues around the diagnostic sector. But one of the things that the pandemic did is that everybody has now got used to the idea of self-testing. And when something's wrong, you want to know what's wrong, so you can make a choice. That's really the issue. And as I say, the bolt-on of the spray on top of it, and you've got a choice and you've got preventative product, hopefully will go hand in hand together.
And we've talked about that core business focus that you have already around taking control of you and giving you that reassurance of knowing perhaps what it is that you have and empowering you to make a decision on, do I head out of the house today? Do I stay in? Do I go to work? Do I not? It's incredibly powerful. It can't be understated, the real impact that does have, and especially when, like I say, we look at things like sort of the HIV test that you mentioned. Given that now it is a treatable condition, it gives people just so much more, doesn't it?
It does, and again, that kind of goes back to the educational piece.
Absolutely.
So understanding that HIV is treatable, how simple it is to test now. It's a simple mouth swab, there really are no excuses. And that take control of you, I mean, it's our strapline, but it's also what we passionately believe in, because every single person is individual in how they feel about something or how they want to react to something. And yeah, we like providing choice.
Exactly right. And you mentioned as well that obviously there's a lot more in the pipeline as well, new products that are going to be coming to market. You're working sort of closely with the NHS on that. So I'm guessing if we were to maybe sort of look ahead maybe 12 months from now towards the sort of latter stage of 2023, where do you see yourselves by then, Brigette? What's in the pipeline?
Well, I mean, we've always tried to build the BioSure brand as being incredibly trustworthy and credible. So we are starting with our sort of blood-based tests with things like diabetes. We are looking at tests for PSA, bowel cancer. So when we were very originally working with HIV home testing, I think the biggest anxiety from the regulators is how people would deal with their result and what would people do if they had a positive result and could they cope with it. And through really robust post-market surveillance data that we've got, we have really shown that people can deal with getting their own result. We've never worked so HIV is a treatable condition, which has always made us very confident in home testing. With things such as bowel cancer and prostate cancer, we need to make sure that we have got a seamless transition into healthcare for those conditions. So we won't be addressing those subjects, but it's certainly where we're heading once we're confident that there is a very simple, straightforward pathway back into healthcare, looking at treatment for such things.
So it seems like there's a very exciting year ahead, and I actually would relish the opportunity, Brigette, to welcome you back and just catch up on some of those incredible developments and innovations as they start to come along, because it seems like it's a real big 12 months ahead for BioSure, and there's going to be plenty that you're going to be branching out into, and certainly wish you every success with that.
Well, I would be delighted to come back. Thank you. And I have to say, if there are any listeners out there that kind of would like a chat, or especially looking at our international kind of push through into Europe and the Middle East at the moment, we love collaboration. We thrive on it here.
Absolutely. I'd certainly urge you to reach out and get in touch with Brigette, anybody who's listening in that may be interested in that as well. And if you are an individual as well who may be affected by some of the issues that we have discussed as well, or you feel that what we've talked about does particularly resonate with you, you can certainly reach out to us directly and leave a comment or ask a question. You can do so via leaderscouncil.co.uk/contact-us. Any questions, of course, that we might get for you, Brigette, will be forwarded directly onto yourself, of course. And for individuals who might run their own business, their own organisation in this field or any field, and you have your own perspective to bring to the discussion table on this or any other topical matter or issue, then just remind you that you too can also apply to be on the podcast, and that would be via leaderscouncil.co.uk/apply, your best port of call. For now, Brigette, it's been fantastic welcoming you onto the programme, and thanks ever so much for the time taken to speak with me. And it's been really eye-opening and enlightening from my perspective, just understanding a bit more about how BioSure is really looking to bring these sort of testing and preventative products to the market, and how you're trying to make them accessible to the public as well in what is a tricky economic time. So again, really wish you do the best of luck over the next year and hope it all comes together well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott.
And I hope every single one of our listeners also enjoyed hearing from Brigette today. And do go indeed check out a little bit more about BioSure if something that we've come up in the discussion today may be of interest to you. And for any interested parties, I believe you do have a website, Brigette, is that right?
We have our main direct-to-consumer website is bbiosure.com. As I mentioned, there's discounts on there for Leaders Council, but also obviously we work with volume customers, retailers, so you can get in touch with us through there.
Absolutely fantastic. As always, I've been your host, Scott Challoner, on today's episode of the Leaders Council podcast. And until next time, when we'll be back with a whole new perspective on leadership and current affairs, please do take care all, and goodbye.